This is the exact framework that I've used to drive over $20 million in sales for e-commerce brands. And in this video, I'm going to show you step by step exactly how to implement it for your own brand or agency. I'm going to take you through step by step the entire process, everything from analyzing performance to briefing new ads, creating ads with AI, tracking performance, iterating, creative analysis, and forecasting and budgeting. Let's go ahead and just jump into each one, and then we'll go into each section in a little bit more detail. So starting out with analyzing performance, here I'm just going to go into my Meta Ads dashboard, show you how I think about looking at KPIs, tracking performance, all that kind of stuff. From there, we're going to go to briefing new ads. I'll show you some tools I use to spy on competitor ads and create new briefs. From there, we'll do creating ads with AI. This is extremely powerful and simple for brands that maybe have a tighter budget or just want to get a really high output of creative volume. This is something that you should definitely be leveraging right now. Then we'll go into tracking performance. I built out this performance tracker and I'll show you how to do the same. From there, we'll go into iterations. I did an iteration tracker as well. I'll show you how I think about that. From there, we have creative analysis. I'll show you what tools I use for that as well. And then finally, forecasting and budgeting. I'll show you some tools I use for that and how I think about it. So that's the process from a high level overview. This is going to be a long video, but I promise it'll be worth it. And by the end of this video, you will have the entire system that I use. Literally, I'm not leaving out anything that you can go ahead and apply to your own brand or agency. And I promise you'll see results with it. So stick around and let's get into the first part, which is analyzing performance. So at the beginning and end of this performance analysis flywheel is obviously just looking at performance in platform. In this example, we're going to be in Meta, looking at a couple of the top creatives, looking at what's spending, looking at some of the metrics that I look at, and really just getting an idea for what we want to look for when it's time to iterate, get new creatives made, all that kind of stuff. So this is one of the accounts that I'm in, and you'll see right off the bat that especially when you're in Advantage Plus, Meta tends to skew a lot of the spend towards one creative or maybe a handful of creatives. And in this case, you can see it here. This top one up here is getting almost 38K spend, which is vastly outspending all the rest of these here. The next one is at about 17K, then it goes down to 10, 7, and then some low spenders down here. So if you're spending in Advantage Plus, this is very common. And a lot of people who just get started in Advantage Plus freak out when they see this. They're like, my creatives aren't spending. There's a couple of fixes for this. So the first thing you should know is Meta's AI is very good at targeting. And if it's doing this, it's probably doing this for the right reason. And I'll show you that in a second. But you need to understand that this is doing this for a reason, and it's not a reason to panic or think that Meta is spending on the wrong creative, right? If you want to change this, there's a couple manual ways to do it. You can run an ABO, so that's where it's optimized on the ad set. You set a budget per ad set. You can set a budget per ad, so making sure that every ad gets the same amount of spend. That's one way to do it. You can do minimum spend thresholds to make sure that creatives meet a certain amount of spend. You can do cost controls. There's all kinds of things you can do here, but what I've found with my testing is just that Meta's Advantage Plus is really good at targeting and it knows what it's doing. So I kind of give Meta the reins. I ease off and let Meta do its thing. And really I just focus on producing as many good creatives as I can and let Meta do the rest. So that's the first thing that I wanted to call out there. I recommend putting your dashboard in a layout that makes sense for you. Of course, there's all kinds of metrics you can look at: CPM, CTR, CPC, CPA, all of these different metrics, ROAS. But you need to understand what is most relevant for your business or your client's business and really put the main ones first, and then all the other ones are secondary. So for me, the main thing I look at is CPA, cost per result, also cost per purchase. For this brand, we know this is a subscription offer, meaning that all of the traffic driven here is to a subscription offer. So understanding that, we know that we can afford a little bit higher CPA because we know our LTV on the back end. We know we have an average LTV of about $300, $350 6 months after ordering. So we know that we can easily afford to pay $40, $50, $60 to acquire a customer as long as they're going to stay subscribed. So that's why we go on a CPA model. We don't look at strictly just ROAS on the first purchase because that doesn't really tell the full story. Now, of course, if you're not running subscription, this could be a little bit different. If you don't know your LTV, if you're a newer business, it's a little bit different, but this is a more established brand, so we understand that we can afford to spend that much to acquire a customer, right? So anything under generally a $45 CPA is good. That's what we're looking for. And obviously the lower the better. Anything with 30, 25, it's always great. So all these are in line, and that's what I'm looking for when I'm optimizing. That's the first thing I look for is just what is our CPA. And then from there, it's also important to look at things like your new customers. So you can also create a custom metric that shows you the percentage of new customers versus existing customers. That's also important because we're strictly looking for new customer acquisition, and we're willing to pay more to acquire a new customer than maybe getting an existing customer. So that's another thing I take into consideration. You have plenty of other metrics in here. You have CPM, cost per link click, CTR, all that kind of stuff. But these are all, like I said, secondary, and I just want to make sure that our CPAs are in line. And that's really what I'm looking for when I'm optimizing these ads. And of course, there's other things you can do, but this is the main thing I'm looking at when it comes to optimization. So after you analyze performance in the ad account and you decide it's time for some new ads, what you would do is you want to go and look at competitors. Of course, there's various other ways to brief new ads. You can do iterations of existing ads. You can look at customer reviews. This is just one way to do it, but it's a way that I really like to do it. So I use Foreplay. It's very easy to use. You can spy on all your competitor ads. You can see how long they're running. You can filter by ad type. It's great for all that. So I've been using it for a while. And I'll just show you real quick what I use in the platform. It's not going to be a complete demo, but I'll show you how I go about using the platform. So first, we'll start off with your discovery. And this is basically where you'll find new brands, right? So you can add filters in here by status, niche, content style, platform, format, whatever it is. You can go over here to brands, and this will give you a list of brands. So then from here, you can search a brand. Let's say we want to find AG1, brand will pop up, and it comes up with all their ads here. So this is really great because it's their entire ad library in here, but you can take it a step further. You can click in here, and there's all these attributes and stats. The time running, this is something that I'm always looking at because you want to find an ad that's been running for a very long time, which means it's probably a winner. It shows you if it's still running. It gives you the CTA, the format, the niche, the platforms it's running on, the landing page, so you can see where they're sending most of their traffic. All this really good information is hosted in here. So that's why I like to use it. If you like it, you just click this button and it adds it to a swipe file. You can build different swipe files. You can categorize them in whatever ways you want. But this is just a really good way to save down ads and get inspiration. And then literally just send it to your creative team and say, hey, here's a brief, recreate this for our brand, right? So that's how I use it. You can filter over here by newest, oldest. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of my favorite things to do is filter by longest running, and it'll show you the ones that are the longest running. If you want to take it a step further when it comes to spying on brands, you can add them to something called Spider. And this is something that you have to pay for extra spots, but it's definitely worth it. This allows you to like mega spy on brands. You can get even more information. It'll tell you anything you want to know about their entire acquisition funnel, from their top landing pages, top performing hooks. It'll take a second to load, but they keep adding features here. So this is really great to have. You'll see there's a breakdown of the different ad types. It shows you the split between videos, images, carousel, DPA, all that, top landing pages and how they're kind of weighted, top performing hooks, how long they've been running. So you can see there's a lot of really good information here. And you can click into these too, and it dives a little bit deeper, but that's another thing you can use. And finally, over here, these are kind of your swipe files. You can build out these boards and save down anything you want. So those are really the three main features that I use. I'm not going to do a super in-depth rundown here. The other thing that I'll add is that there's also a briefing tool. So you could go over here and you can write briefs directly in the platform. So if you want to just stay in platform, you find ads, you create briefs directly in here. It's a really easy way to do it. You just go to new, create brief, and then it's going to pull something up and you're going to be able to create a brief. So this is how I use it. Again, this is only if you're doing kind of competitor research, but it is a big part of the briefing process. So I definitely recommend using a tool like this. It doesn't have to be this one, but something that has these capabilities. It just consolidates everything, makes the process a lot easier and smoother. So that's the way that I do it. And then, yeah. And in the next piece, we'll get into actually creating ads with AI. And so now I'm going to show you how I go about creating ads with AI. And one thing I just want to preface this with is AI can get you about 80 to 90% of the way there. It's not perfect yet, but it is very good. ChatGPT just came out with their new image generation tool. So it's a lot better than it used to be. But what I like to do here is I like to get my ideas on paper. So I'll use ChatGPT or whatever AI tool you prefer to get the concept out there, get it 90% of the way there, but then hand it off to a designer to finish all the little tweaks and edits. What you'll find is that ChatGPT doesn't fully get it correct. There's going to be little things that need to be edited in the text and just little details that are going to be off. And no matter how many times you iterate, it's not going to get it right. It's just how it is. You can see up here, part of the M is cut off. And if I'm going to do this again, if I'm going to do a new generation, the image will be completely different. So there's just all kinds of little things that it's not going to be perfect on. So I just want to preface with that. Make sure you pass it off to a designer, but this is a good way to get all of your concepts into a reality, get it 90% of the way there. So we'll look at the prompt that I used. And the important thing here is that you give it a reference image. So you can use something like I just mentioned. Foreplay is a great tool that you can get reference images from competitors. Just copy one of those images for the general concept that you want. Get a product image, just a high quality render, no background, and combine the two. And then from there, the prompt looks something like this. Basically, give it background on the product and the brand. Tell it who it's marketed towards. So in this case, it's for fitness enthusiasts and athletes. It's drank by men ages 18 to 35 who want to maximize performance at the gym. You could give it some of the brand elements like colors and typography, all that kind of stuff. The more info you give it, the better. That's one thing that I'll say about prompting is think about it like you're describing this to someone that has never seen the brand before, right? You can't just say, create me an ad for this product. It needs to be as specific as possible. And that really arms ChatGPT or whatever AI you use to take those details and take that information and maximize the outputs. I also included stuff about the offer here. Again, a lot of the text and stuff is going to be done by editors and designers, but it's still good to give it an idea of where the text is going to go. And so I give it that. And then I said, show some peach flavored imagery, and then just some more things that give it the details it needs. And so this was the prompt and this was the output. Again, this looks really solid. Like this is a really good output for a one take. We'll have some things edited by designers, but for a one take, this is really solid. This is 90% of the way there. And this is definitely a concept that I would run. You'll see some other concepts up here. These were some different iterations that I tried, different variations. Now up here is an example of one that I didn't do a great job of prompting. So even though I gave it a couple of reference images and it kind of replicated that, the prompt was pretty vague, pretty generic. And this is an ad that I would not run, right? This is just very generic. I could have made this myself on Canva in 5 minutes. And it's just, it lacks a lot of depth. It's not ready to run, right? It's too busy with the text. So that's a perfect example of needing to be really good at prompting. And then I did some variations here, got a little bit better, still not there. This one was interesting, more of a summer theme, but you want to just make sure that you're really good on the prompting aspect, and that's how you're going to get the most out of these tools. So now we'll look at an example for an ad creative tracker. And the purpose of this is to track all your new briefs. And once they go into Meta, once they start being spent and you want to track performance, this is where you tie each ad back to the specific brief. And there's multiple ways to do this. This is just a generic template that I've been using, and there's actually a more simplified version that I'll show in a second, but this is kind of what it looks like. So this is an old version. I don't use this version now, but this will give you an idea of what you could do. So over here, we have the date. This is where you segment out by each week is the way that I did it in terms of new briefs. So you'll see in this week, there was 4 new briefs that went out, and that's how it's set up here. You have a drop down here for image, video, or GIF. Then creative, you have this and it links to each specific brief. So all of these are just in Google Docs. You can say whether it's launched, yes or no. Is it live? Yes or no. Number of versions. So if you have variations, you would do 2 versions, 3 versions, whatever. Budget, if you have designated testing budget, you can put that here. Once it hits the budget, you can change it from a no to a yes. The landing page, so if there's a specific landing page that it's going to. The test type, is it a new concept or an iteration? And then over here is tracking the metrics. So the KPIs that we had were CPA, ROAS, CTR, CPC, CVR. And these are below average, average, above average. Basically, the way that I was grading them was if they hit, I think, 2 or 3 of the 5, then that determines it. So I think 3 out of 5 is a winner, maybe 2 out of 5 is average, and then 1 or less out of 5 is poor. It simplifies the process. The only thing I'll say about this is that it's more manual. There are APIs that you can use to connect this directly to Meta, which is what I would recommend. So that's a way that you could do it. This other version that I had was a more simplified version. So it just has the date, the ad type, the brief, has it launched, the budget, has the budget been hit, the lander, the test type, and then performance. And that's either great, average, or poor. That was kind of just more judged on, acquisition cost, that kind of stuff. So this is an example of a more simplified version. There's also a brief queue. So this is where all the new briefs would go in. It's segmented by brand, product, the type, the style. So is it UGC, testimonial, flavor focused, benefit driven, product education, ingredients, offer, social proof, the link to the brief, the ticket if you're using another system for your creative designers. the test type, has it been submitted, the date it's submitted, the launch date, was it launched, is it a winner? It's a very in-depth system. If you can keep up with it, it's a really good way to keep everything organized. And you should definitely have both your media buyers and your creative strategists be working in this at the same time. There's also a top ads section. So it has the top ads, which ones they are, what type they are they active, all that kind of stuff. There's some stuff on naming structure. So you can get creative with it. That's really the gist of it. It's just a way to keep everything in one place and to track everything. It can be a lot to manage. And of course, there's other tools out there like Motion, but I'll show you in a second. Motion, I would say, is more for creative analysis. It's hard to kind of tie back to briefs. So this is kind of a system to bridge the gap between the brief process and the analysis process. So in the next couple videos, I'll show you what it looks like to track iterations. I'll show you what it looks like to analyze creatives and all that kind of stuff. So now we have our ad iteration tracker, and this is just a way to track all of your iterations on different ads. This is something that I built out. It's really just a simple system to track them in a visual way. Of course, you can do something in Google Sheets, but this is how I was doing it for a while, and it's definitely useful. So I segment it into different products. So we have beverage, creatine, pre-workout. The way that it works is you decide on what the test is. So either it's going to be something like, for example, the flavors. So this is the same creative, but there's different flavors being featured. Or your headline, same creative here, but you're testing your headline, maybe your offer, and then sometimes it'll be a completely different concept. So it might be the exact same headline or copy, but a different concept. Most of these examples in here will be something like headline, something as little as background color. Usually I wouldn't do now, but of course you can test whatever you want, copy, all those kinds of things. So the way that I lay it out in a visual view is I have this umbrella system where it goes to the test. So in this one, it's flavors. And then we saw which one was the winner. So for example, this one was the winner. We would iterate off of that. So this one right here is a good example. You test the headline. This middle one was the winner. So now we want to test the flavors. You can see we keep the headline the same, a little bit different in terms of the layout, but it's the same headline, the same angle. And then we test that. So we test different flavors there. Okay, that one's the winner. So now we would iterate off of this. And the way that this is going to work is it's just going to keep going down and down until you basically find a set of winning angles, headlines, whatever it is. And then that's where you're going to use to create new concepts, right? So real quick example here, but this is just a visual hierarchy, kind of a visual example of how you can do it. And this is just something you could start testing right away. Again, you can do it in Google Sheets. You can do any system you want, but this is just an example of one way that you could do it. And so now we're on to the creative analysis piece. And for this, I use Motion. There's plenty of other tools that you could use, but this is just the one that I like. And I'll just dive into the platform a little bit. Again, this won't be a complete tutorial, but I'll show you some of the useful aspects that I use. So down here, it shows just like it does in Meta Ads. You have your spend, CPA, AOV, whatever metrics you want to track here, it will be over here. And of course, you can customize this, lay it out however you want. Up here, this is more of a visual representation. You can add or remove metrics up here. So if you want to add an AOV, let's say it's going to bring it there. You can remove ones. So a couple different views here. You have this one. You have this line graph, which is kind of interesting. And then this card one as well. So I like looking at all of these. And again, you can rearrange these metrics however you want. You can add and remove them. And it's very responsive. There's also different reports over here. You can do ones like top copy, top landing page, all that kind of stuff. I generally just use it for the creative, but you can do whatever you want. There's filters, so you can filter by campaign name. You can do different date ranges, all that kind of stuff. It's really useful for that. But I'm using this to look at what creatives are performing well, usually looking at stuff that we want to iterate based off of. The nice thing too here is that it compares to your account averages. Anything that's doing really well compared to the account average will show up in green. You'll see this one, for example, has a CPA that's 25% lower than the account average. And this would be one that I want to scale, right? And it shows this for every single metric. You can lay this out in different ways in the table settings. So you could do this where it shows the green ones and the red ones that are underperforming for certain metrics, however you want to do it. But this is the way that I do it. And yeah, this is a good way to just quickly gauge performance, see which ads are doing really well. You can click on them and you can also get creative insights. So you click into this and it's a little bit deeper dive on the creative. It shows you a preview for different platforms. So you can look at it on Meta, on Instagram. And then over here, it shows performance. It shows you placements. So you can look at spend, impressions, whatever you need to by placements, which is really good. It gives you gender and age breakdown. So that's great when you're briefing to figure out what audience is this ad really resonating with. Great way is just looking in here instead of spending a lot of time in Meta trying to figure that out. Your performance metrics, again, all of this is included down here. And you can also add notes too as well. And then you can always copy the link and you can send this to your creative team, your creative strategist, whoever needs to see it. So this is a really good platform. There's a lot in here. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're not already using it. One more thing to mention is up here, you can also group by ad name, creative, copy. So maybe if you have a brief that all has the same code in the ad name, you can group it by that and only look at that brief. However you want to do it, there's a lot in here, but I highly recommend either using this or a tool like this to track your creative.